This is the salt path. I contend that the book by Raynor Wynn, but I don't even contend it's by Raynor Wynn. Any book written by a member of a very long-term couple is going to be in some ways a joint enterprise. So I see this book as by Raynor Wynn and Wynn. The book The Salt Path, I contend, is an overall good for society at large. A net benefit for the common good. Now, this won't be very good, and it's just the introduction, because I don't really have the facilities to make half-an-hour videos and edit them nicely. I can't do any editing. So, I have written various. I have a range of correspondence, audio, and in email, and I'm going to make another audio to try and really get to the nub of it, because it's much easier to make audio. As to why I say such a seemingly silly sounding thing. First things first, I call myself Ralph Schism. It's just an adopted pen name. Why? I only mention this because I personally never really get into contemporary current affairs, because it's all just so silly, almost all of it. And well, I'm a pretty serious person, but you see in the comments, now I have followed this for a couple of months, for kind of personal reasons. I'll come to them in a minute, but gosh, some of the comments, I don't usually read comments, but it's important, it is actually part of this, that a lot of people have really gone in to make their point in it, particularly if you look at interviews with Raynor Wynn that are on YouTube, past interviews. Oh my gosh, the vitriol, the attack that I don't like these silly words like trolling. I think a lot of people need to say their say. They felt very cheated and let down. And one of the very silly things that people say is, oh, well, they're using false names. Oh, that's absurd. People have been using pen names for writing for hundreds of years, thousands of years, I should imagine. I happen to use the name Ralph Schism for various reasons that I've written about, but I hate my name, Simon. I've always hated this name. I'm sure there's a psychological label you could apply to that and call it a disorder almost. I don't like my name. I happened to love one of the very few people in my life that I've loved. A magnificent man called Ralph, who was my mentor when I was for quite a few years of my from the age of about 10 to about 17, 18. The truest, most wonderful old countryman that you can ever encounter. He taught me everything. The most humble giant of a lovely, thoughtful, caring, gentle man. And I used the name Ralph. I kind of 10 years ago thought, no, I want a pen name. So it's like, but I did it. I thought of Heath for a while. In fact, one of my banks has even got a login, Heath Co-op, I think it is. I thought that's a bit too pretentious. Anyway, Raynor Wynn, Wynn, names don't matter. I've mulled this matter over. I haven't wanted to, because actually it's very boring. 2 months ago I sat on this bench with somebody who wishes to give a constructive critique of certain information. And I was encouraging her, I was trying to assist her, bolster her. Why do I mention that? Truth. Truth does matter, but truth is a word that particularly the last 4 or 5 days, it's a certain event in America. Too many silly people have warped and played with the word truth in a way that's not very helpful. Authenticity is fundamental, but right, let me try and get straight into, well, one of the things that you won't see written anywhere. Now, I've lived on this path, literally lived. I've walked about 4,000 miles of this path, not in any I've got to get to that waypoint today, I've got to cross that bit off my list, which most people do. I can tell you some things about this particular walk. Let's just call it a walk. It's almost all women walking this walk. Almost all of them have read this book. To them, the book, the writer is virtually saintly. Or was until 2 months ago. Virtually everybody walking this walk is on a kind of, well, they're at a turning point in their life. They are looking for wholesomeness. They're working through past phases of their life, and perhaps it represents to them a kind of a turning point. Did I say? Yes, I did. Almost all of them are women. Now, let's get to this book specifically. Or rather, now, I'm a very book person. I haven't had a television for 30 years, and I do kind of, the book is my kind of religion. But let's be crystal clear. The sort of person that's going to buy this book is almost all female. But they are buying this book. It is marketed. It is there for them. They encounter it. The blurb. They might look it up. They might look up on Goodreads what have people said. It's the sort of person that's buying this book is actually looking for something that's going to give them direction, that's going to give them guidance through a period of almost inevitable, deliberate realizing who they are. Now, that's the wrong way of putting it, but so many of these phrases have just become so cheesy wank. They're at a turning point. They want to go and discover more about themselves, or they want to discover who they can be. That, I should imagine, this book is probably more than any other book for many, many years, is the book that they've gravitated towards. Now, so it's important. Now, I don't think even the writer has themselves set out to deliberately defraud, because I don't think they realised it was going to sell so well, apart from anything else. Well, of course they didn't realise that. Anyway, let's just try and I'm going to have to keep this so brief. First things first, what is this kind of a book for? Well, what is any book connected with the countryside, or one of my favourite words is landloping. If you look up the OED definition, it represents a kind of being aside in a slightly, the exact definition in OED is, yes, it's like in a schismite way, like I've had enough of the bullshit. It is a kind of noble vagabonding. Now, what's the point of a book existing in the world of thoughtfulness? Especially if they're connected with not straightforward tourism, but travel, living aside, sticking your finger up with a clean fingernail to society, and that might be connected with, like, for example, being in a van, as I lived for 4 years. Well, unfortunately, I think for the last 15 or 20 years, there's just been so much trying to perform, oh, look at me, I'm special. The first purpose is to give good information. Now, that also, anybody who actually has lived many years in the countryside, if you live in a very rural area, one of the most important things is accurate information. Take you're on a low budget, you're on a low income, and your expenses are higher living in the countryside, take your vehicle to that garage there. They won't fiddle you, they won't rip you off. They'll be able to weld it when most garages will say, no, got to get you a new £350 exhaust. To give the information, and that applies to any kind of marginal existence. Now, I've dipped in and out of marginal existences all my adult life, and it's critical. And I don't think the younger people understand this anymore. It is the religion of the person living aside, being aside, existing aside, struggling aside, surviving aside, the information. Now, I did actually have a scan through the first book. I read the second book quite carefully. There is so little information in this book. I mean, just I'll give you an example. If these people were really, really poor, they might, well, okay, it's like I encountered this by chance, but there is a particular small town down towards the bottom of this bizarre county where there's a church, where there is a food bank that anybody can use. Now, it's only filled up every 2 or 3 days. 5 or 6 weeks ago, somebody I knew went in with a great big bag and just cleared the fucking lot out. Now, that sounds horrible. So, there's a food bank, but if you knew that area, I've even worked there, there is no decency there. There is no morality. There is no thoughtfulness. It's just a complete fake place. So fuck it. I'll clean their food bank out. That's a little bit contentious, but giving useful information is a very important aspect to presenting a work like that, or a story, or a memoir, one's diaries to the people. Now, my impression is there's virtually none of that. So why is this a net benefit for the common good? It's a bit complicated. I don't even know if I'll manage to even begin to get to it here. But more importantly, I've just been sitting in the church, charging up. Does this book have any information as to where you can go and charge up? I'm not spending £4 for a lemonade in any of the pubs, between £3 and £4. I mean, what a greedy rip-off dump of a place. To the point. There happens to be a corner with lots of books, some books, and I have to go and spend an hour sitting in there charging up. So I scan through the books, and it just occurred to me this morning, although I already know this, but it was brought home to me. Books, most books, okay. Your thriller, I've never read a thriller, but yeah, I'm a highbrow pretentious git. Most books, ultimately, books like A Man Called Ove, most thoughtfulish books, they're about how to live, how to persist, how to muddle on. Okay, you can sort of come up with slightly fancier sounding things like how to find meaning in a chaotic world. But they are about how to persist, how to get through the swamp of ordinary people and ordinary life. And in the case of this book, I think that is the most important thing, because that's what even ordinary novels very much often weave that in. As a really good example is a book called Pereira Maintains, a European book, magnificent book. But Reader on the 627, Jean-Paul Didier Laurent? Oh, well, Reader on the 627. Just showing off. How to persist. How to persist. I mean, you have your absurd Norwegian who only got his book contract because he's so fucking rock star, good looks. Okay, my struggle. I've read most of it. It is a struggle to read through it, and I persist with very long books. I mean, that's about 3,000 pages. There's nothing much in there. Don't bother. Yeah, but how to persist through the, let's call it a struggle if you want to be melodramatic. That's with a bit of aplomb, a bit of nobility, a bit of grace. That's what a lot of books are. And to a small extent, I think the books, or particularly, well, all of them, they do incorporate that, but it's now almost all devalued by the fact that the fault, the cause of the struggle, was more than self-inflicted. It was based on, yes, committing a horrible. I mean, I'm a complete and utter sane lefty. We knew property is theft decades ago. All property is theft. I think the communists say that. I'm not really that radical myself, but spinning bad acts into, oh, bad acts were done to us, is no good. So the whole thing is completely devalued. And the how to persist is thus also devalued. So what? I'm going to now have to go to audio, but I've just been doing a little bit of writing for somebody specifically, and that really is the starting point. I mean, this in itself, I'm not going to use a fancy word like thesis, because I know I'm fucking well right. I spent a lot of the last couple of months walking this path and letting it bubble, mergulate. I don't care, but I think there is something really important for society if you can follow my thoughts. Something positively important. And yes, this in itself, I think, is almost worthy a book, except really only 50 pages. Maybe if somebody wants to pay me up front to do it, because the truth of this path, I don't know if I mean, I did see this truly awful. This is a bit of a film. Some cafe owner was insulted, apparently. I've encountered nothing but meanness in this whole. Oh, world experts have painted on smiles, as you find in Goa, Bali 40 years ago. I mean, that's what tourism is. This is a #1 tourist area. It just happens to be somewhere where also people like me, who I happen to have spent decades of my life just in very, very isolated places, meandering places like this. So people are drawn for this, but this has got nothing to do with tourism. The economics and social dynamic of tourism, which you see, there you go. I'll end it on this. There's one book I've read in my life. About 40 years ago, I read this book by a farmer woman who was past middle age, a kind of memoir, and it was in Northish, and it so stays within me. This is the whole point. The information, or this is actually making a little bit of a philosophical point. She wrote in her memoir of how in her northern small town, perhaps above Harrogate or somewhere like that, once tourism started 60, 70 years ago, you would have some kind of incomerness, people buying sort of getaway escape homes, that it really corrupted the community. Well, so yeah, great. I believed it. It was wonderful. I trusted this woman. Furthermore, in the context, this was in a time when their thoughts weren't pushed off here and there and everywhere about false spirituality, which everybody wants to claim now, as did Raynor Wynn in her rebuttal. I mean, it's just all bullshit. No, it's just this wonderful woman, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, just told it like it was about what a memoir of her life in her poor rural community, how things were so discombobulated when people started to come in. And I'm all for everybody in the world mixing and interbreeding. But really, that was about money. When excess income from the south started to come into her little, previously fairly functional, well-balanced, very rural community, things started to wobble. As always happens, and particularly happens as soon as you have tourism. So I don't hold it against anyone individually that they're so fucking false it's ridiculous. I mean, there's somebody, oh no, up that way, God, they have a little, I just look at all the sea stuff like it's plastic. They've got an oh, they look great, they don't half look the part, and she's got a big fan and looks so hip, so whatever the female version of the hipster, but has a place where rentals are done. And you would have thought such a person whose whole act is kind of hipster, just so blah. As soon as such people think, you're around for more than a week, my God, they get the way they behave to you is just, unless of course they perceive you as they can benefit from you. That's a tourist economy in a place where the land is very expensive, because some tourist operations have managed to make quite a lot of money out of tourism. Always the society is destabilised. Anyway, I better get to audio if I can now.